everyone, and welcome back to Philanthropy. On today's episode, we are continuing with the conflict series. Today, we will dive into conflict avoidance. So if you are conflict avoidant, or if somebody you know is conflict avoidant, this is the episode for you, because we're going to explore how to have a conversation with someone who is conflict avoidant, how to have a difficult conversation if you are conflict avoidant. And then also we're going to work on, for the conflict avoidant person, how do we become more assertive? So those are some of the topics that we'll explore today. I wanted to kind of do a bit of the basics of understanding these conflict types, because of course there are 5, right? We have talked about, the 4 conflict types that people default into. We talked about those in another episode. And then of course the assertive conflict type, which hopefully all 4 conflict types are going to work towards. So that's what we'll be doing today. And if you are conflict avoidant, this is the episode for you. Or, of course, if you're trying to understand somebody you love or work with who is conflict avoidant, how do you work with this person? And the key part of that is understanding them and understanding where they're coming from. And this episode touches home for me because my default type is conflict avoidant. And so I really understand going through all of this information, what it feels like to avoid that conflict. So if we're going to have a difficult conversation with a conflict avoidant person, the key thing to remember is that you have to approach it slowly and steadily, like a turtle, okay? And the reason being is that conflict triggers them, and they have spent their entire life avoiding conflict. And they can spot it from a mile away, and conflict avoidant people are the type of people who will dismiss and ignore conflict. They'll do whatever it takes to minimize it. So these are people who will say, I'm fine, it's okay, and will look the other way or suddenly disappear. They'll find whatever means they can, and they'll also be people pleasers. That was something I think even for myself that I would oftentimes do, is I would try to make people happy so as not to trigger them. And that of course comes from avoiding that discomfort, right? And of course in earlier episodes we talked about how a conflict avoidant person, sometimes it becomes their default because they're around explosive types. They're around confrontational, aggressive types. And this produces a stress response in them. And so for them, safety becomes paramount, and they do not want to tread into any territory that might create drama, might create trauma, chaos, anything of that sort. They're going out of their way to try to ensure that that doesn't happen. But then often what happens for a conflict avoidant person is that their needs go unmet, because part of the beauty of conflict is that you're able to express your needs to somebody. And that is a very uncomfortable thing for many people. We don't like to be vulnerable. We don't like to just put it out there that we have needs, but we do. And so it's really important that we make a conflict avoidant person feel safe. If we know we need to have a difficult conversation with them, we want them to feel safe first and foremost. And understand and allow for their discomfort, because they will be uncomfortable. And so we want to make sure that we understand that going into this conversation, first and foremost, you've identified that this person is likely conflict avoidant. We saw that on some of the earlier episodes through this conflict series. If you're trying to identify if they are conflict avoidant, then now you say, okay, what do I do next? What are my next steps? We're creating that safe space, and we want to make sure that we have a gentle exit strategy for them. So we can simply say, I would like to have a conversation with you about such and such. I really want to understand where you're coming from. We don't have to solve anything today, but I do want us to explore this topic a little bit because I'm trying to understand what your thoughts are, where you're coming from. And so you want to make them feel safe. Key thing, okay? So they cannot feel threatened. You cannot come in to them with drama, with chaos, with an aggressive demeanor. You want to make sure that this person feels safe in your presence. You want to be direct with them, but you also want to be gentle with them. So we're using I statements and we're not pinpointing or targeting behaviors about them. When you revert to you statements, you did this, you did that, you're going to make them feel defensive. And we've talked about that even with a difficult conversation. That can trigger all conflict types, you statements. So we want to keep it focused on I statements. I'm feeling this way, and help them to understand, and of course invite for them to share their thoughts and their sides also. But you really want to clarify the importance of this conversation. So this is twofold. We are also calling out their avoidance, right? So the reason that we're having this meeting, and whatever the meeting is, or why we're having this conversation, we want to be real clear with them that there is a purpose behind it. And if you went to one of the earlier conflict episodes, I think it was the how to have a difficult conversation one, where we decide, do we need to have a difficult conversation? Are we going to love this behavior? Are we going to leave this behavior? Are we going to change this behavior, or hoping to change it? And so you've already decided, yes, I need to have this conversation. Yes, I need to have change. Yes, there needs to be action in this one area. So you know already going into the conversation with this person that you're hoping for some change. You're hoping for some action on whatever area that is. And so you know what that reason is, and you know why you want to have this conversation. So now is the time you have to share that with your conflict avoidant person. So you want to make sure that they understand why we're sitting in this discomfort. We're not sitting in this discomfort for our pleasure. There is a purpose behind it, and they need to know that. You need to be very clear about it, but please try and word it as gently as possible. You also want to stay grounded and recognize that they will likely withdraw. And again, that's going to be calling it out, and gently. We can say something like, I can see that this makes you feel uncomfortable. And at this stage, this is where you can provide that easy exit strategy. You can simply say, right now today, I would like your thoughts on this. We don't need to make a decision. We can set a date in the future. If you need some time to think about this, then, we can come back to this. We can revisit the decision in, 1 day, 2 days, whatever timeline seems reasonable to you based on that situation. But you want to help them. You want to acknowledge that this is uncomfortable for them, and just give voice to it, because that will actually help your conflict avoidant person. They're not yet comfortable stating that they're uncomfortable, but if somebody else says it, this is uncomfortable, and you could also share, I'm not enjoying this moment. I'm not enjoying having this conversation. I can see that, this is uncomfortable for you, and I'm not taking any pleasure in that, but I do think it's important. And again, you're revisiting the reasons of why you're having it, and that will really maybe help them. And you could also in that moment think of things that might ease the discomfort in that situation, like, would you like me to get you a tea? Would you like a moment? Things like that will help them in that discomfort, would be very reassuring for a conflict avoidant person. Then they know you're not attacking them, you're collaborating with them to try and find a solution, right? When you have me versus you situations, that is going to trigger a conflict avoidant person. But if you look at a situation as how do we sort this? I'm inviting your contribution, your thoughts, then you're going to give more power to them, and you're not going to trigger them. And then, of course, if you feel, you're not getting anywhere, you're really struggling, and you could, initially, if you've never, or if you've struggled in the past to have conversations, successful conversations with a conflict avoidant person, and it's a difficult conversation, then this will be new territory for them. This will be new territory for you. And the first time might feel like a flop. But if you follow these steps and you stay consistent with them, they'll become more comfortable and the steps won't be as intense. They'll become more used to them. And of course, I know there's going to be people who say, well, it's not all on me, blah, blah, blah. But if you want to have a relationship with this person and you want things to progress forward, then it is on you to help and understand that they haven't been raised with a perfect model of assertiveness in a difficult conversation, so that they really don't know how to do this. And yeah, it would be really great and wonderful if they just woke up one day and they were assertive and they knew how to do it, but that's not the reality. So we want to make sure that we are doing what we can to try and bring out that assertive response to them and try and help them to meet you halfway in that conversation. So there is going to be some legwork on your part, and unfortunately that's a reality, but I'm grateful you're here and you want to learn so that you can hopefully bridge this connection with your conflict avoidant person, because obviously you see a reason to have this conversation and you must care deeply for this person, or you have a professional relationship that you don't want to sever. So that's good that you're here and you want to try and improve things with them. But at some point you might decide that I think I need to set some boundaries because I have pushed, maybe you've tried, maybe you've done a few conversations and you can see that they're not budging, they're not moving. And then of course you still have power in that instance and you can say, well, I have done everything that I can to try and address this issue, to try and bring the change forward, and they are completely resistant. They've clammed up, maybe they bolted and you haven't heard from them and they've ghosted you. And if that's the case, you have to recognize that you do have power. You have boundaries that you can set. And you can say, it's really important to me that we discuss this topic and we're both part of that conversation. And I'm not making decisions unilaterally. And if we can do this together, then it's better. But if you can't sit and have this conversation with me and we can't decide something and we can't move forward, then I don't know that I can have this relationship anymore. And then you simply say that to them, that's my boundary. If we cannot sit and discuss this like two people who value this relationship, then that's my boundary and I'm going to stick to it. So that is how to have a difficult conversation with a conflict avoidant person. If you are conflict avoidant and you have decided, oh my gosh, I need to have a difficult conversation with somebody, and they may be also conflict avoidant, they may be passive aggressive, they may be explosive, they may be confrontational aggressive, they may be assertive. Nevertheless, I need to initiate this conversation because they have no idea that this is something that is bothering me and it's on my mind, and I need to remember that I matter. That's the key point for a conflict avoidant person. Your thoughts matter, your energy matters, your life matters. And I'm saying that to you because I know what that feels like, to devalue yourself and to put everybody else first and ahead of yourself. And that's great, to be selfless. I definitely encourage that, but not at the expense of your emotional health and your mental health, because then what happens is you are minimizing yourself and maybe nobody is meeting your own needs. And if you're not very good at meeting your own needs and you're hoping other people do that, then you can end up very drained and very frustrated. So it's really important and key that you recognize that your thoughts matter, right? You don't have to be aggressive. You can be assertive, and assertive means you're able to state clearly the things that matter to you, your thoughts, your opinions, your preferences. Every area of your life, you definitely have things that are important to you, and you're able to share that confidently with somebody and without worrying about the emotional fallout, because I think that is probably one of the key things for a conflict avoidant person, and all people with conflict really, that they're so worried that if I bring out this issue, this relationship could end. It could end tragically. It could create drama and trauma that I'm not ready for. I'm not ready for this relationship to end. And so you tiptoe around everything all the time, and you think if I just keep the peace, then they'll love me and they'll stay with me. But then you have quiet resentments. Those resentments can build. And let's go over the health risks, even for a conflict avoidant person. This is the price you pay for your silence all of the time. Some of the health risks include chronic stress. And that chronic state of stress can often lead to anxiety. The emotional suppression of negative emotions can lead to numbness and depression. Headaches can become an issue. Digestive issues can be an issue. You can also suffer from high blood pressure, heart disease. This can also affect your relationships, like I mentioned. Chronic and persistent avoidance of conflict can lead to loneliness, isolation, or resentment with your partner. So those are the tolls inside your body, physically, emotionally, mentally. These are the prices we pay for our silence. And so that's not benefiting your relationship. Your relationship is already suffering by not saying the things that matter to you. So it's really important that as a conflict avoidant person, you also can go through that checklist that we've talked about before. And this is where you decide, do I love it? Do I leave it? Do I change it? This is the checklist we always go through. Is this something that I can live with? Is it just an annoying quirk that maybe only bothers me, and maybe it's something that I can learn to live with? Is this something that completely goes against everything in me and I need to leave? I'm not even going to bother trying to change anything because it has crossed a boundary so severe, like abuse or whatnot. In that case, then you might just leave. You might exit the relationship for your safety. But if you decide this is something we can work on and it is important and I do want to see change in this area, then you have to take action, and we have to initiate that difficult conversation, as uncomfortable as it is. And that's a really key point for a conflict avoidant person, is that we have to learn to sit with that discomfort and really unpack it, not avoid that discomfort with another person, because you're silently over here suffering and feeling that discomfort anyway. You know what discomfort feels like, but you don't want to face it with somebody else. But yet you silently live with it and suffer with it. So that's not a good thing. What we're going to do is we're going to expose it. We're going to bring some light to this issue, because you can't keep torturing yourself privately. You need to be able to get this out and get it off your chest. And then the beauty is that you're going to feel so much freedom, so much lightness in your being, energy. You're going to be so proud of yourself, and you won't even recognize yourself. You will feel like a brand new person. Now, in this moment, I'll stop and I'll share. Okay, so I think I had talked about using your voice to a lot of my teenagers when I was a principal. I really liked to encourage them to use their voice and to try and give them as much voice and choice, give them as much power, because we need young people to be able to think and speak and be vocal and take action. And so I was on a spiel. I was given a speech, and I guess it must have really hit home for some kids, because one girl in particular, not long after, I had a whole series of conflict situations that I had to manage. I had this one in my office upset, and these two in my office upset, and this one, and there was a lot of people who were upset with this person. And I was taking in all this information. And of course, my job as a principal is to mediate conflict, to try and bring peace back to the school so everybody can focus on education. And I brought this young lady into my office and I asked her, hey, can you tell me what's going on? I'm starting to see a pattern here. There's a lot of people that are upset with you. And she said, you know what, Miss Iron? after your speech that day, and we were talking about the things that are important to you to speak to them. And she's like, I started doing that. I started telling everybody what I thought. And she said, and she shared with everybody what she thought. And so, I mean, at the one hand, I was really very proud of her that she was getting out a lot of the things that definitely had been sitting inside of her and she hadn't been addressing. But again, I said, okay, well, there is a way that we can do this assertively that's not going to stir up too much crap in your life, hopefully. But that it can be a little bit intoxicating when you start to tap into your inner power and you start speaking the things that matter to you, that are important to you, and you start not giving a toot what other people think. That's so important. And that's not to, throw caution to the wind and sever all the relationships around you, but it's to recognize that people pleasing has not been helping you in your life, and people are going to dislike you no matter what you do sometimes. And so again, it's learning to live with that discomfort and saying, I'm going to choose what discomfort I allow to sit in my body and what I don't allow in my body. And sometimes I have to recognize that if I'm not addressing something, that I might be condoning something in my relationship. When we turn a blind eye, we're not actually turning a blind eye. We're just not addressing something, and it continues. And people won't change until we start bringing up things and they start to recognize the impact that their behavior has on us. So it's really, like I said, it's going to be a really great thing for you if you start to tap into the voice, whatever is inside of you that has been wanting to be shared. And sometimes that's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable for other people, but if you become better at it, then it gets easier. I mean, if you practice it more and more, it becomes easier. It becomes a skill, and it's no longer a character flaw, right? You might feel at this point right now that conflict avoidance is a character flaw, and we're going to turn that around. We're going to decide, nope, I'm going to do something about this, and I'm going to start today. So I really want to impress upon you, if you are a conflict avoidant person, that silence is not safety. True safety is in truth. Okay, so one of the things that you can do if you have decided, you've gone through your checklist. Sorry, I know I went off on a little bit of a tangent there. But if you have decided, love it, leave it, change it, yes, I'm going to have a difficult conversation, something that you can do is you can start this process by writing out everything that's bothering you about this, whatever the issue is, the thing that you want to have a difficult conversation about. You can practice, you can write it all out, you can even write it out as a script. You can imagine what the other person might say and what your response might be. If you know them very well, you might actually be able to predict it. Maybe in some ways you've seen that person respond to conflict in certain ways, and so you know what might happen. So let's write it all out. Let's write out the thing that bothers us the most and get to the heart of the matter. And if you want, you can practice it on the writing. You can practice having this conversation in the mirror. You can practice it with a friend or a pet. But the key is that you are getting comfortable voicing your concerns and trying again, keep it on an I statement. Don't use the you statements that are going to inflame a situation. Keep it on an I statement. I feel this way because, and just like in the difficult conversations, we said, I feel this way because, and this is what I need. So if you frame your need from that perspective, that's going to help somebody because now they understand where you're coming from and they understand what you're asking for. And so now the choice is on them, no matter what their conflict style is. It's part of this relationship. It's now on them to decide, can I meet this person's needs? Can I take action to meet this person's needs? And at this point, they may or may not. They may say, okay, I'm going to do whatever it takes because I value this relationship and I love you and I want to do this. But the other thing is they could bolt. They could say, I'm not prepared for that. I'm not prepared to do this or to do that or to meet your needs. I'm only focused on myself. And if they are, well, you're going to breathe a sigh of relief. After, you might be a little bit hurt at first, and that's very understandable. But then you're going to feel the sweet joy of relief that you no longer have to tiptoe around this person. You no longer have to allow your needs to go unmet chronically with this person. They know where you stand, and if they've left, you get all that energy back. You get to focus on meeting your needs yourself and go through some of my other videos, and we can talk about how to love yourself and all of those fun things on how to meet your own needs. It will be a gift if you can get through and have that conversation. If they leave, great. You're no longer investing time and energy into somebody who wants to be selfish, right? Now you can say, okay, you know what? I get it. They are gone. I'm going to move forward in a good way. And you'll probably be really proud of yourself, incredibly proud of yourself for taking that initiative and saying, okay, I'm glad I had that conversation. But there are some things that I want you to consider, because I did say we are going to move from conflict avoidant to become an assertive, and definitely having that difficult conversation is a huge step in becoming an assertive conflict type. But I want you to remember that we're going to reframe the situation. We're not going to look at conflict as a bad thing. And I think that is something that conflict avoidant people see danger as soon as there is any kind of discomfort, and they tiptoe around it because they don't want to inflame it. But we're not going to look at this as a bad thing. We're going to look at us expressing our needs as not being aggressive. We're going to be clear and respectful. Even if we've seen bad examples of people approaching conflict in our life, which is likely why you're conflict avoidant, you've seen a lot of drama, we can take charge and we can do this in a clear and respectful way. And the reason that we want to do it that way is because we want people to treat us with respect and to understand that if we're not treating ourselves respectfully and honoring our needs and expressing those needs, they never will. They never will. If you just tiptoe around and serve them all the time and they get used to that narcissistic behavior in your relationship, it's all about me, and you just smile and tiptoe around and serve them like that, they're never going to learn how to think about another person. They're never going to learn how to reach out and check in and see, how are you doing? How can I help you? How can I love you better today? They're never going to do it. They're just going to constantly say, well, this person is great because they do everything for me and the focus is always on me. And then meanwhile, you're secretly, resentful and hating them. And partly that's on you. That's partly on you because you helped to create that relationship dynamic, and you have to recognize that when you're stuck in a shitty relationship and somebody's taking advantage of you, if you haven't stood up for yourself, then you're condoning them to be a selfish person, right? You're teaching them that this is an okay behavior. So we're putting a stop to that. We're not allowing that kind of behavior anymore. We're not allowing anybody to mow over us and our needs so that they can get whatever they want, right? We want to make sure that they understand that a relationship means we're both putting in the effort. We're both caring for each other. And so you're teaching them how to be respectful every time that you are clear and respectful about your needs, right? You're giving them a gift. You're giving them a gift of how to love you better. And they need that. Trust me, they need that. If you have been conflict avoidant in every relationship for your whole entire life, they need to know how to love you better. They are not doing a good job. And so you can start small with this too. You don't have to go big or go home. Sometimes people will say out loud, what should we eat, blah, blah, blah. Or maybe for 20 years, you've always just gone to whatever restaurant that they've chosen. And this time you're going to say, no, actually, I want Chinese. I don't want fried chicken. And they might be like, what? Who are you? And that's okay. Start to say in small ways, start to assert your needs or even likes, right? Start to say, today after supper, I don't want to watch TV. I don't want to watch the game. After supper, I would really like to go for a drive and look at all the Christmas lights. And if you don't want to join me, I'll go by myself, right? And that might be like, what? Oh my God. They'll be like, what are you talking about? And they'll start to see that you're now starting to take care of yourself, right? You're starting to meet your needs and you're starting to express those needs to this person. And of course, I know a lot of my examples have been like relationship based, but even if it's at work, right? Sometimes it's just speaking up a little bit in a meeting where you would normally never say anything, you would never give an opinion. Put your hand up and just say, hey, this is what I think. Or pull someone aside and kind of say, hey, this is what I was thinking at the meeting, but I didn't want to say it in front of everybody. Just so that people get a sense of who you are as a person and how they can do a better job in this relationship with you. Okay? So giving them a gift. Something else, and again, like I said, you can write it out, whatever it is. Even if it's a small thing, you can start talking about all of the things that matter to you, right? Like start journaling. If you haven't journaled, maybe you have journaled, maybe you have a long history of journaling, and what you need to do is to take the jump from paper to person, and that's okay too. So that's where you start saying, okay, if I've been journaling consistently and I always write about the things that I prefer and I need and et cetera, now you're going to start expressing that, right? Just even go through your journal and take a small risk one, something that's not as huge, and say, okay, I'm going to tell this person this one thing. And so, yeah, that can help you. And something else that will help you even in like a difficult conversation is to monitor your body language. So when you're, for instance, having a difficult conversation with somebody, you might notice that you're starting to clam up and you know the physiological cues and the physical cues. Maybe you start sweating, maybe your knee starts twitching, or maybe you start shrinking. And so now we're going to take notice of that. You don't have to proclaim it to anybody that I'm really uncomfortable, I'm feeling discomfort. But in that moment, you can do certain things that are going to help you to feel more confident. You can take some deep breaths, you can inhale, you can exhale a few times to calm your nervous system. You can push your shoulders back, lift your spine, and look eye to eye with this person. Hold your gaze with them so that you're not feeling like you're cowering or they're in a more powerful position than you, because again, you're reminding yourself that you matter. Your voice matters, your thoughts matter, your needs matter. And so you have to lift yourself in that moment. You're going to speak calmly, steadily. And for a conflict avoidant person, you're definitely going to be very conscious of your wording because you're probably somebody who doesn't talk very often. So I don't think that you're going to say something that will be over the top unless you've been really sitting on stuff for quite a while and it all pours out. That could happen. But I think you'll be very conscious of your word choice. So again, you want to be clear and you want to be respectful about your needs as often as possible. Something else, and again, one more time, I want to hammer it home that for a conflict avoidant person, you want to ensure that you are becoming comfortable with discomfort. So it is not going to be a fun thing for you. This is going to shift everything in you. But conflict is not a bad thing. And I always say that to people. Conflict is not a bad thing because it is often a bid for connection. This is where two people, at least two people, it could be more, are not understanding each other. They're not understanding each other's needs, each other's thoughts, directions, values, whatnot. And having a difficult conversation with somebody that you do not understand can be a bridge, because now you can start to understand them. And like I say, it's not a cure-all. It's not going to fix everything, because you will end up learning in some relationships that you're better off to go in two separate ways. You will not align on something, but that's time that will be given back to you, because you've been out love and energy and attention to somebody who maybe is unwilling to do the work in a relationship with you, and you need that information. Otherwise, you're going to be carrying on in this miserable relationship for maybe another 5 years, 10 years, and you know that's toxic. We already went over the health risks, so you want to make sure that you are saying, I matter. And so instead of suffering silently with my discomfort, I'm going to have a moment of confidence, and I'm going to channel all of that discomfort that I'm privately torturing myself with, and I'm going to sit with that person, and I'm going to say, hey, this is something that's really important to me and really matters to me, and so we need to have a discussion about it. I have been maybe quietly unhappy about something, and I need you to know what that is. And I would like for us to talk about it. And it's as simple as that. And the immense amount of joy you'll feel, it's crazy. I always say I'm a recovering conflict avoidant, because I would like to say I'm assertive, but I definitely recognize those moments where I still struggle with conflict avoidance. And even for myself, I have to coach myself through it and go, hey, are you being conflict avoidant here in this moment, Jess? Are you avoiding a conversation because it makes you feel uncomfortable? You're worried what the other person might think or feel or say? And then if I know I'm quieting myself, I am silencing my own voice to keep the peace, then I know that I'm not doing anybody any favors. I'm not helping myself. I'm not helping the other party. I'm not helping the relationship. So it's really important that we say, okay, this might feel uncomfortable, but we need to have a discussion about it. And I do believe that, like I said, the more that you practice this, the more that you will do this with love and grace and compassion and kindness. You don't have to kick the hornet's nest. You don't have to be an asshole about it. You can do this in a kind way, but it takes practice, and why not today, right? We don't know how long we have on this beautiful earth. So let's start living joyfully. And part of that, I always say, people who want more peace in their life, they want more joy in their life. Have you been addressing those areas in your life where you need to sort out some conflict? Because if you've been avoiding it, you won't feel peace. You won't feel joy, because you're denying a truth. And you need that truth to come out. It doesn't have to come out aggressively. It doesn't have to come out in an ugly way, which is what we're used to. But it does need to come out. You do need to share that truth with somebody. And if they love you and they value you, they will cherish that information. They will say, thank you. Thank you for helping me to understand where I'm not showing up, where I need to meet your needs, where I need to be doing some heavy lifting. And they'll be grateful to you. And if they don't, well, you need that information too. You needed to know that they were not invested the way that you were. And now you're free to find a relationship. And that could be a friendship. That can be a working relationship. That can be anything. And you can say, okay, I'm going to pour my energy where somebody values it, where they appreciate it, and they want to meet me, and we can grow together. And so you'll be doing everybody a favor by acknowledging these truths. One of the final things that I'll say about conflict avoidance is that we want to meditate, as always. You knew I was going to say it. You knew I was going to go there. If you meditate, and the more that you meditate, go back to some of my earlier videos if this is your first video to watch, and unpack, how do we meditate? How do we do that? Because you're going to get to that truth the more that you meditate. Because when you quiet your mind, you're allowing your inner voice to speak clearly. So that's the beauty and the benefit of meditation, that sometimes we don't even know what our needs are until we start to meditate, and they'll start bubbling up to the surface. They'll start coming out, and you're going to start saying, wow, where's that coming from? That's a truth. That's a truth that you need to honor and acknowledge, and you need to maybe share with somebody important to you. So the more that you meditate and you clear the mental garbage and the chatter that's going on in our heads, the more that our spirit can speak to us, and it can talk to us, and it can tell us and show us those areas that we've been avoiding and neglecting, maybe at the expense of our own health, our mental health. And so we want to address them. So meditation is going to be a practice that's going to help you. And then, of course, for a conflict avoidant, you might decide, I'm going to start doing some journaling about this. This is what came out in meditation. And that might lead you down the road of saying, okay, it's time to have that difficult conversation. But again, as always, I say you're worth it. All of your thoughts and opinions and needs matter, and people need to know them. You need to honor them, and other people need to know them. Because many, many people out there, they seek outer peace by running from their inner discomfort. But that's not the true path to peace, right? The true path to peace is honoring our thoughts and our needs and sharing those with others, because that's a gift. So I hope that helps you if you are conflict avoidant. I hope that helps you to understand somebody you love who may be conflict avoidant, or even somebody that you work with. But I know every time I do these kinds of activities with people, they're often shocked that they're a conflict avoidant person. They didn't know this was a thing. They thought it was their own little private suffering. And also they also start to recognize the people around them who are conflict avoidant. And if you start shifting that dynamic, then other people will start responding to you differently. So this will be the first one. And of course, we are going to unpack passive aggressive behavior coming up soon, explosive behavior, and also confrontational aggressive. So I'll continue probably in the next few weeks. We'll do all three of those and all of them, how to have a conversation with these types. And then, of course, if you are that type, how to move forward and become assertive, because of course you can. We all can. That's the goal for all of us. If we can all become assertive, man, our relationships get so much better. So thank you for tuning in. I hope it helped. And if you know anybody who would like this video, like, share, subscribe. That would be wonderful, because I know for myself as a conflict avoidant, before I started doing this work, man, I would have loved this video. So have a wonderful day. Bye.